Tommy Fisher, he's funneled more than $30 million into a private 3-mile border wall that he calls the Lamborghini of walls at the US-Mexico border. I love that everyone laughed at that. Yes, the Lamborghini of walls. He was doing this during Trump's presidency, the one term that he served. So let's get straight into Bloomberg's reporting on this. So our guy, Tommy Fisher, said, I was like, this would be really fun. This will be a project that will be remembered like the Hoover Dam. Man, he has a lot of aspirations. If only I did 1,000 or 2,000 feet, everyone's gonna make fun. No one can really make fun of this. And what this was a 15,000, 18-foot wall with steel bollards spaced 5 inches apart. So he went for 18-foot wall with 15,000, well, 3 miles worth of an 18-foot wall circle around the Rio Grande. So that's what he did. Now, how did he do this? He originally got some backing of some money groups that were tied in with Trump's associates. So the insider went on to point out that in 2019, the We Build the Wall is an organization dedicated to crowdsourcing funds to build a border wall that paid Fisher's company, Fisher Industries, $6.9 million to build a half-mile section of wall in New Mexico. So he started in New Mexico. We Build the Wall was founded by Brian Kolfage, excuse me if I messed up your name, who's a US veteran, and co-led by former White House chief strategist Steve Bannon. Keep that in mind. So in 2019, Kolfage, Bannon, and 2 others were indicted on suspicion of defrauding donors of $25 million in connection with this organization, We Build the Wall, according to court papers seen by Insider. Bannon was given a pretrial pardon by Trump just before he left office, and Kolfage later faced additional tax fraud charges. So this is who he was mixed up with, who was giving him the money to build this wall. So he went from the New Mexico part where he built the short wall there, and he was given additional money by this group to build even more. So this is when he talked about the Lamborghini of walls. But since President Biden has come into office, he's rolled back this construction on Trump's wall. So just last month, Biden returned $2.2 billion to the military that was previously allocated to build a wall under the Trump administration. So even though that has happened, it seems like the money's gonna dry up on Fisher. He can't continue more of his wall building. Also, this wall has issues with the geographical nature of it, the environmental nature of it, and how he's just kind of slapping it next to the Rio Grande as if it's just a great idea. I'm not sure how much planning went into it, but many groups that know better than he does are pointing out that this is not a very good idea. But before I get to you guys, one other thought on this. He doesn't seem concerned about the drying up of the money. He's hoping that the border wall remain needed because the border crisis will be a problem, and that the federal government will be moved to take over his private wall no matter who's in office. So in May of this year, US authorities encountered more than 180,000 migrants at the southwestern border, is what he's counting on. And the most in 20 years, and then more than 50,000 people had come through the Rio Grande Valley, which is where his 3-mile wall is. He's just trying to get some more money for this. I'm not sure how much he really cares about the issue, but just more about, hey, I built all this stuff, somebody's gotta buy it.
Well, the money that they raised, you mentioned it. You mentioned a lot here, so I won't comment on each and everything. But the money that was raised and the reason that Bannon was pardoned has to do with the fact that they had guaranteed. I think it was run on TYT. The video of them saying the great thing about this is Bannon speaking alongside this dude. Every dollar you donate is not going to go to administration fees. It's not going to go to anything but building that wall. So I want you to know that every single dollar is going right to the wall. And of course, $1 million went into, I'm talking of donated money, went into the pocket of Bannon, and another $1 million went to the guy. I mean, the organization was rife with corruption. Now, we don't really care in a way because it's all money that's being, those saps who want the wall built are donating the money. You could be of that position, and that's kind of where I'm coming from. My real issue with the wall, is, beyond its ridiculous nature. The whole thing is utterly absurd. But it's the last point you made, which is that you've got environmental habitats that are being destroyed. Mm-hmm. You have a recklessness about the building of this thing. It's awful, frankly. It's awful. And so in addition to soaking people for the money, and as I say, I don't really care about those people who are soaked, but it's a bit of a criminal enterprise. And what they're doing with that wall, that's criminal, what they're doing to the environment.
Yeah, totally agree. It is painful to see that footage of his brilliant, his $30 million 3-mile wall or what, right, that he got. But it's awful. Yeah, it's a blight. It's going to be totally terrible for the environment, for the Rio Grande Valley. It's ugh. But I mean, that's the thing, is that here's this guy who was given this contract and he's got 3 miles to show for it. And he's not even all that mad that basically all of this money was raised and none of it was actually given to him, which, like, thank God they're grifters, because then we would have more of that horrible blight and more of the, like, habitat destroying, land eating, just concrete wall of disgustingness. It's just, it is, I don't know if this gentleman lives along the border, but it really is interesting to, there are all kinds of folks who live along the Rio Grande Valley and in along the border. They run the gamut politically, but I think one thing that a lot of them talk about is having an understanding of the kinds of people who are coming into the United States, and they are not criminals, and they are not, they're not evil, they're not rapists or whatever, the hell Trump said. They're people looking for a better life, and they're people looking for work, right? And it's interesting because it's the one thing, like Beto O'Rourke, who I generally think is just kind of a sad sop, he's sad, just I don't know. But he does, because he's from Texas, sort of understand the dynamics of the border, and that it is much more nuanced and fluid, and that a wall will not stop anything or anybody. And we just, even Democrats are terrible on this. I mean, Schumer and Pelosi have been selling out the border for decades, right? Because they know that, like, obviously there's the one Republican point that I agree on is that, like, there is cheap labor and all corporations benefit from that. Yeah. And not having a pathway to citizenship even helps that. But then they're selling out. They're like, you can militarize it. Yeah, put all the drones and the towers and do all that. But a border wall's terrible. No, that's bad. We can't have the wall. Let's have other technology. Let's have heat-seeking, night vision to, like, get these mothers traveling with their children. But no, a wall is terrible. So it's like, everyone is bad on the border. I don't think there's any leader. Well, you're right.
Everybody's bad on the border, and immigration is a problem for both parties. No one has a solution, because there isn't really a solution, a clean one. And you mentioned the Democrats and you mentioned the Republicans appropriately. Neither party has a solution, and both parties point to crises at the border, because the overall crisis at the border continues throughout Democratic administrations in control of Washington and Republican administrations in control of Washington. So it does continue, but make no mistake about it, that Trump bumper sticker, which is I'm going to build a wall and Mexico's going to pay for it, it carried him. It was one of the things that carried him in that populist, that faux populism. Okay, it was totally fake, but that faux populism carried him into the White House. And then you thought, well, at least he's not going to be able to pass an appropriations bill which would allow for that wall to be built. And then he didn't get the money from Congress. He just stole the money from the Pentagon, where they're wasting it in other ways. But that's a different conversation. But the idea that this wall in any way is a substantive step toward controlling immigration is absurd. It was a grift. It was a grift from the start. And if you look at the way the wall money was doled out, it was doled out in the biggest numbers to Trump supporters, donors, who didn't even have any experience
100%
building a wall ever before.
Yeah.
And they got all this money from the administration. And so all I'm trying to say is that the border wall at its essence was a folly. It was a grift. Many made money on it, and it was also an environmental disaster. And as disasters go, the immigration disaster continues to be America's ongoing disaster. And as you suggested, the gray market for all that labor, that continues, and it's a necessary part of our economy as well.
Yeah, Mark,
right. And
yeah, go ahead, go, friend.
No, yeah, and I think that, like, even just going back to the way that, that things were in terms of immigration in the 60s and 70s, and allowing people to cross borders just as we allow capital and money and corporations to cross borders, because we give them personhood, but we don't give people personhood. Borders and border crossing are a natural part, and they have been the part of American history, of Mexican history, of Central American history, allowing people to come into this country to work and to go back to their countries. That is seasonal, it makes sense. Now, I'm not saying there are not long-term solutions in terms of the amount of crises and the gang violence and the drug violence, but that's on us. That's also on our drug war instead of Kamala's, don't come rhetoric. And Kamala Harris, honestly, Vice President Kamala Harris, just now they're talking about, root causes, and finally they're saying the word root causes, but their solutions have nothing to do with the way the United States needs to stop the drug war, needs to pull back the amount of money and militarism that is feeding and fomenting some of the worst elements, worst gang elements, and worst drug violence. And lead toward the path of legalization. I mean, now we're getting to bigger issues, but It is all interconnected.
But that's this is the way things have been ingrained in society, that in order to stop this problem of, like you said, everyone's bad on the border because of the situations that have created the issue at the border, which isn't not just at the border. It's not, the problem doesn't start and stop at the border. In fact, it starts way further away from the border, and those things that we have been conditioned to believe are necessary, it's hard to get rid of what's ingrained in our society. So people won't connect the issues with the border with, hey, you know what we do in other countries? Do you know what we've done in other countries? People that are nowhere near power right now have done in other countries that got us where we are now. And if you explain that to people, they'll go, oh, yeah, because they can't make that connection, because it's been so long that it's there. It's why we have the institutional racism problem. It's why we have such hate for LGBTQ folks in our country, because whether or not you even think, because you may have a gay family member and you go, oh no, but I love Jim. Yeah, but you forget that there's more than just Jim. So don't just take care of Jim and then go off and then say F you to everyone else. We're built in this way to think that everything is just nice and fine and kind here, and then we try and put out this small fire there and don't realize that we're throwing bombs further down that's spreading the fire right at us. I don't know how to change that. I mean, it's a failure of a process and a failure of a political system, but maybe it's not a failure. It's just the way it was put together. It's the way they want it. One programming note on this story. So I guess it's not a programming note, more like a story note. You pointed out earlier about this guy, Tommy Fisher, who got all this money for the wall from this fraudulent group. He is from North Dakota. Because that's along the border. He's worried about the border.
Right. That's exactly right. I thought it was Minnesota. In my memory, it was Minnesota, but it's North Dakota. Yeah, that's right. It's absurd.
Because he's got the other border to worry about, right?
Where's the wall there? I'm just saying, he's closer to that border, obviously. But that brings me to the next point: is he saw an opportunity. He's like, I'm gonna go down south, build this wall, butter up Donald Trump, and be one of those people that, Mark, as you mentioned, I'm not sure, maybe it was Francesca, but when you guys mentioned, hey, he made sure that these contracts that they got for these walls came from people who were nice to him. How many times did this guy openly say, well, you're mean to me. Oh, that's just a nasty thing to say about me. Oh, well, he's nice to me, he's my friend. That's how he made decisions, and the people around him made decisions, because that's how they got near him, was by kissing his ass.
Also, he was a big Trump donor. He was nice to him with money.
I guess that's the main way to get to his heart. And so the fraudulent nature of the way that went also is just the nature of the game. So this guy didn't know how to build walls. I mean, anyone else who was building walls, who buttered him up. This was the type of thing that was said in 2015, and I've said it so many times. If I was on the show more, you guys get tired of me saying it. In 2015, foreign leaders, it was like the report on Donald Trump when he was just a candidate and he was running against 22 other Republicans. The report on him was, if you butter him up, if you kiss his butt, you know what he'll do? He'll give you whatever you want.
Yeah.
And I remember when we said that, I was like, this is dangerous. Because you think, if this is going around with foreign leaders in their circles, you think they're not gonna walk around Kim Jong-un, Vladimir Putin, kiss his ass, and then after doing so, he goes, I'll give away the store to you, because he does that. So in this case, this is how they got their money from these types of situations.
I mean, he's a walking national security risk if you are that easily swayed, if your ego is that fragile that someone just needs to build you up and then they get whatever they want. I mean, easiest job interview ever. If we could just go into a job interview and be like, oh my God, you're looking good. Do you like work out regularly? What's your regimen? And we just but then suddenly you get whatever you want. I'll have the corner office, by the way, nice shoes. Like, what? In what world? This is someone who's never had to work for anything in his life. He's never worked. He's never been taken seriously. And everyone just butters him up. And it's so funny too, because Trump's rise really does like finger every sycophant, no matter what political party, left, right, everyone buttered up Trump, man. And like that sort of like elite sycophantry that gets you access into anything, I mean, that's imploded. You know, the curtain is off.
But they're still trying. And as we wrap up, my other thought was, again, the fraud nature of this. It's just the way things work. The We Build the Wall was a fraud. The Trump PAC that was at the beginning of the show when John was hosting, it was a fraud. The Trump PAC has gone to him. The money has gone to his pockets. And it's funded his traveling around the country to continue to tell you guys he's gonna be back next month and give me more money to fight these fraud elections. And none of the money has gone to fight these fraud elections. It's the playbook. It's the easy playbook. And lastly, remember Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz were on the beach down here in SoCal, and they got interrupted by the guy, and he yelled and he said pedophile. All the money that they're raising, people are talking about how they're raising all this money, and they are. But they've spent more than what they've raised. They don't know how to even grift correctly. Just put it in your pocket. Just put it in your pocket. Take some lessons from your dear leader.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, Jayar. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.